Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining our live webinar, Enhancing Nonprofit Organization through Integrated HR, Payroll, and Scheduling Solutions. Glad to see that so many of you have joined for our session today, and I can also see that many of you were part of our first two webinars, so thank you again for joining. Today's webinar is the third and last of our series. The first one was about the risking nonprofit technology platform and increasing employee happiness and effectiveness. The second one was about empowering nonprofit with key finance features to overcome industry challenges. And today's webinar is going to be all about improving nonprofit operations through integrated HR, payroll, and scheduling solution. And as usual, today is going to be the opportunity for us to share our knowledge and that we believe will be empowering your organization. For those who do not know me yet, my name is Gary Serious. I am a senior account executive at Sparkrock. I've been in the ERP space for quite some time, for over a decade now, helping both non-for-profit and for-profit organizations when it comes to find the right solution to automate their process in terms of finance, HR, and payroll. And the more I work with non-for-profit organizations, the more I wanted those to be my main focus. That's how I ended up joining Sparkrock, because they give me the opportunity to do just that. I am sure I will have the opportunity to talk to many of you that have joined us today. As you know, we are a Microsoft business partner and work very closely with the Microsoft Tech for Social Impact team. So I just want to say two words about the wonderful work that Microsoft does through the Tech for Social Impact business unit. Microsoft has a long-standing commitment to supporting nonprofit organizations, and this has been a core part of their mission for years. And to enable them to achieve their overall goal, which is to empower as many non-for-profit organizations as possible all over the globe, Microsoft created the Tech for Social Impact business unit back in 2017. And this unit focuses on providing non-profit organizations with software solutions to bridge the technological gap that exists in the industry. The way they achieve this is through grant and discounted solution from Microsoft, the Microsoft Office, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Dynamics 365, and other Microsoft products. But overall, today, after a short 6 years in action, they support more than 300,000 nonprofit organizations on the Microsoft Cloud. So we just wanted to take the time to recognize and applaud their effort and accomplishments. Now, how do Sparkrock and Microsoft work together? Many of you were part of our first two webinars, so you are already familiar with Sparkrock. But for those who have not heard about Sparkrock before, for those who may wonder what Sparkrock is about, I just want to give you a bit of background on who we are, what we do, and how we partner with Microsoft. Sparkrock was created in 2003, exactly 20 years ago, and always had a very unique position from the beginning. From day one, we partner with Microsoft and work hand in hand with them as part of the Microsoft Embedded program. And when most people think about Microsoft, they do not think about ERP. But as many of you may know, Microsoft has been in the ERP business for over 30 years. And as Microsoft evolved over the years through technology and innovation, so did we. Today, we are built on top of Microsoft ERP cloud solution called Microsoft Business Central, which is a very robust and proven ERP solution meant specifically for for-profit organizations, and I'm sure that many of you are already familiar with it. So what we find with our experience is that when you work with nonprofit and human services organization, is that Business Central, like any other solution made for for-profit organization, are missing key functionalities that organizations like yours really need. So there are requirements around invoice approval, around managing fund, around grant accounting, or around generating specific reports, complex regulatory reports that you have and that do not exist in the for-profit world. And non-for-profit organizations that are using those tools that were specifically designed for businesses end up wasting a lot of time and resources and having to implement a lot of manual process, which is very detrimental for the organization and could even impact their focus on their mission. In fact, before we came along, non-for-profit organization had pretty much the choice between well-established solution designed specifically for businesses, and as we just discussed, this is less than ideal, or niche ERP solution built for non-for-profit organization that unfortunately were not or are not as robust and well-developed as the solution available for businesses. And worse, they lack the stability and security that large organizations could offer. With Sparkrock, what we do is that we bring together in one side all the security and stability of the Microsoft infrastructure, and on the other side, the sector-specific expertise of Sparkrock, with all the features and functionalities that are specific to the need of non-for-profit and human services organization. So really, we are the best of both worlds. What we bring to the table is our capacity to leverage Microsoft investment in Business Central, which is significant. Not only because it's cloud, but also because you're benefiting from the privacy and the security investment. And as you know, Microsoft makes ongoing investment, not just in the features and functionalities, but again, in the privacy, the security, the mobility support, the interoperability within the Microsoft environment and ecosystem. And I have to say that, well, Microsoft is doing a pretty impressive job, right? Because in this webinar, all of us, we are all Microsoft users. We are using Microsoft Office, Microsoft Teams, and Microsoft plays a big role in our everyday work experience. And Sparkrock works and integrates with Microsoft Teams, with Outlook, and the whole Office 365 suite. So not only we leverage all the Microsoft resources and all the Microsoft investment, but then on top of that, we are offering vertical specific functionalities that were developed through 20 years of investment and experience in that space. And I'm very confident to say that Sparkrock is designed to meet non-for-profit organization expectation in a way that no other out-of-the-box solution in the market can today. Before I hand it over to James to present how you could enhance your operation through HR, payroll, and scheduling solution, I'd like to share one customer success story with you. Every day we have the chance to help non-for-profit organizations to overcome their challenges. So I'd like to talk about one of them, Rehoboth. Rehoboth Christian Ministry was founded in 1976. They started as a single camp to provide residential support to people with disabilities. 47 years later, they are managing 5 regional offices, supporting 50 group homes across the entire province of Alberta, and successfully, of course, using Sparkrock 365 to manage their finance, human resources, scheduling, and payroll. But before switching to Sparkrock, they were facing a few challenges. Their finance, HR, and payroll department were overwhelmed with manual tasks and the use of different solutions that were totally disconnected. Payroll took 2 to 3 days to complete due to the use of paper timesheet, no scheduling solution, and the need to import Excel spreadsheet into their previous financial system. The lack of integration between finance, HR, and payroll also made reporting very difficult, right? Like many nonprofit, like many of you, Rehoboth must provide regular reports, not only to its board of directors, but also to the government, right? Something that, well, all of you can relate to. And these reports were time intensive and an important source of error. One example is source deduction. If this is not done on time or appropriately based on organization threshold, this could result in hefty fines. And in the past, Rehoboth has faced penalties for not filing source deduction on time. And I'm sure that you will all agree that paying fine and penalties because of software limitation is not the most ideal way to use your budget, right? And to that, we need to add challenges around management, lack of visibility on budget, schedules, volunteers' hours, and attendance management. With over $1 million in vacation liability, ensuring employees use vacation appropriately was another huge priority to their board of directors. With all those challenges, they knew their existing system would not scale. Their top priority was to find an ERP solution that could integrate finance, HR, scheduling, and payroll, while at the same time reducing the need for manual calculation and human intervention. So what did they do? Right? They created an RFP and started to look into the best solution out there. At the end, they looked into 5 different ERP solutions, and ultimately Sparkrock was able to provide everything RealBiff needed. They chose Sparkrock not only because we are one fully integrated solution with finance, HR, scheduling, and payroll, just like they wanted, but also because of our partnership with Microsoft. It allows them to integrate other Microsoft 365 applications, such as Outlook for email and Microsoft Power BI. And just for you that are maybe not familiar with Power BI, it's just a data visualization program or platform for advanced reporting. Before Sparkrock, the finance team would spend hours and hours getting a report ready, right? This means that their team were constantly buried in manual tasks instead of focusing on more strategic tasks. With Sparkrock 365 and Microsoft Power BI, the system automatically generates quarterly report and bi-monthly financial statement for RealBiff board of directors. This makes it easier for them to assess the most impactful program, where additional resources might be required, and ultimately provide a higher quality of care for their community. Management has now visibility into budget, schedules, volunteer hours, and attendance management. Submitting source deduction on time is no longer an issue, and Sparkrock has helped them to save thousands in fine. And overall, it's been much easier for them to stay on top of payroll, manage their staff, and provide care to those they serve. And really, this is the type of partnership that we're extremely proud of. And through that story, you really see the impact that having the right solution could make on your organization and your ability to better serve your community. For those that are interested to learn more about the RealBiff story and how our solution positively impact their business, we actually recorded a webinar with them where they related their experience on how time entry and scheduling could help nonprofit organizations to thrive. The link to this webinar that we did with RealBiff will be shared with all of you. So I would highly recommend or highly encourage you to check it out. All right, so now that you have a better idea of who we are, what we do, I'm going to hand it over to our senior product consultant, James Farr, to discuss how non-for-profit organizations can improve their operation through integrated HR, payroll, and scheduling solutions.
Thank you very much, Gary, and hello, everybody. My name is James Farr, and I've been working with organizations like yours, with nonprofit organizations, and helping them make business technology decisions for over 25 years. I've worked with various different teams, including implementation support, product teams, and now my primary focus is working with organizations as they decide the technology fit for Sparkrock 365. So as Gary mentioned, this is the third in our series of webcasts. So I wanted to start out before we dive into today's themes with a quick recap of what we talked about in some of the previous webcasts. So in the first one, we really talked about the cybersecurity risks and the importance of having a true cloud and SaaS application and how that can really help reduce the organizational technical risk and improve audit findings around these sorts of things. So that's sort of a first point that we wanted to highlight. Also, we talked about the Microsoft platform and usability and really demonstrated the seamless integration with Azure AD, Office, Outlook, and even personalization features, and how that usability can really help your organization and users in your organization ramp up quickly and become very efficient with the system. And then we wrapped up with talking about the value of integration and so how the challenges around having organizations with limited resources manage many different systems and manage all the integration across those systems. We're going to touch on that theme a little bit more today, but we touched on those. And so again, feel free to check out the first webcast if any of those speak to you. And then the second in the series, we focused on financial features. And so budgeting approvals and the significance of real-time budget checking, system-generated approvals and compliance with organizational policies. And again, how that can really help improve perhaps audit findings or compliance with organizational policies, improving that you are indeed applying those in the system. So they're not human decisions, they're not things that are happening after the fact. And then finally, we talked about data-driven decision making and how critical it is to really empower your team to do that, your managers. And we really introduced you to tools and techniques for driving that kind of data-driven decision making with dashboards, with Power BI and analytics reports. So again, we'd really encourage you to take a look at those recordings and feel free to direct those to either IT or financial staff in your organization if you think that there's value for them there. So let's dive into today's themes that we're going to focus on. And we're really going to delve into the areas of scheduling, human resources, and payroll today. And, you know, in our experience, nonprofits really face unique challenges. And today we're going to really spotlight some of the key features that can liberate your organization from these challenges, right? We'll explore the value of integration of key systems, the benefit of fully integrated scheduling solution and workflows that help drive efficiencies and better employee experience at the same time. So let's dive into these themes and the demonstrations that go along with them. So our first theme today is integration for seamless workflows. So the challenge really is nonprofit organizations, you know, often are forced to use multiple applications to run core functions like finance, human resources, payroll, and scheduling. And when key organizational data is housed in all these different places, data is often siloed and not accessible or even in the same place, right? So that brings up a bunch of challenges. Examples of this key data, for example, are employee information, right? If you have employee information in a financial system, perhaps in an HR system, perhaps again replicated in a payroll system, and maybe even replicated in a scheduling system, you can see how quickly it could be problematic when that data is different in all these different places. Or also departments or grants or programs or cost centers. So those are things that generally start out in finance, but often, you know, if someone's putting timesheets or maybe you're setting up a new position, you know, that same data exists in all these different systems. And again, there can be challenges with that integration. So symptoms of organizations that don't have the right tools or processes in place across these different systems are things like data errors between different systems. So very obviously, right, we talked about the employee information that's in these different systems and how that data may exist in these different systems. And so errors between those and how do I reconcile those, right? Another challenge may be many different places to set up the same thing. So again, a new employee when they exist, so setting them up at all these different places, or maybe a new cost center. And so if there's a new cost center that's set up, going and setting them up on all these different places and making sure that it's the same code that's been set up in all these different places can be time consuming and risky. And then finally, the frustrating and inefficient reconciliation efforts. So again, if we have data in all these different places and they are not integrated automatically, I may be pulling in data from payroll to finance, and I may realize that that new cost center doesn't exist, or you know, it would set up slightly differently, and so the codes don't match when I'm importing that data. And so what happens is there's lots of time-consuming and frustrating efforts that are made to reconcile that data and make sure that the information is all in one place. So let's take a look at some of the benefits of having a fully integrated system. So consider that all of those systems, you know, at least 4 systems that we described that we're focusing on today, finance, human resources, payroll, and scheduling, are all a single integrated solution, and all of those places are talking to each other. So let's take a look at what life can look like under that scenario. So I'm going to skip over, I'm going to move over into Sparkrock 365. And this is a human resources role center, and a role center is a homepage and a dashboard, if you will. It's sort of a central place where a user would come to, and it's created specifically for specific roles. So this is a human resources manager, so it's highlighting key information about HR for me as a user as soon as I log into the system. So the first thing is that I can see all of the areas that I could navigate through, right? I can click on those, I can drill into these different areas. But secondly, it's highlighting pieces of information, HR task, overdue appraisals, things that maybe are expiring qualifications, things that need to be brought to my attention. And even further, I can go down further, and there's additional dashboards, access to Power BI reports, some of those other tools that Gary mentioned in the overview that I can access and look at here. So additional details here that I can access. In this case, we're talking about the integration across different modules that in many cases are not integrated for organizations. So I actually have the ability to look up the chart of accounts. If I have the appropriate permissions and security, then I can actually look up the chart of accounts and see financial data, even if I'm logged into the system as someone with an HR function, right? All of that is tied to my security, and it's going to control what I have access to. So in this case, I'm an administrator within the organization. I do have access to see financial information, and I actually want to look at some salary or personnel related accounts. So I can see this, some taxes or salary expenses here, and I can see what my budget, my actual is. And in this case, I'm going to drill down on the actual. And again, this is all permissions permitting. I can see all of the transaction details that are making up the balance in that account. So these are detailed transactions that are here. And again, if I have the appropriate permissions, this data will be visible to me, and I'll see these additional columns with information, including all the way over by the side here, where I can see the actual employee number, the payroll type, which is earnings, the pay period or pay cycle here, and even the user ID who entered and posted that in payroll. So I can see all of that information from here. Another benefit of Sparkrock 365 is that I'm able to easily find related transactions. So with this integration, with this being one single system, if I want to find out more information and I have the appropriate permissions, I can use a feature called Find Entries. And Find Entries will report back to me all of the related transactions, all of the related areas that have related transactions to that one that I initiated the transaction from. And so I can see here there's 11 entries for the GL distribution for that, that specific entry. I can look at check ledger entries, payroll ledger entries here, 9 deduction ledger entries, and I can drill down on any one of those. So if I want to look specifically at the payroll ledger entries, I can drill down on those and I can see the specific breakdown, including the paycheck, any deductions, all of those things. These are ledgers that are right in the payroll that I can see, and I can look up those specific entries right from here. Or, if I wanted to look at those deductions, I can actually drill down right into those deductions and again see what those specific deductions were, or even look at the rest of the GL entries, all of the other GL distribution. Since I do have some allocations on some of these entries, I can see the full GL distribution from that particular transaction. So again, this is something that's incredibly powerful. And again, if you don't have all of these systems speaking to each other, in many cases, the data resides in one system and maybe only summary data is in your GL. And so doing this kind of reconciliation or finding the data as it relates, the transactions that make up these entries is very, very difficult and often can relate to maybe even hours and hours of reconciliation or trying to connect the dots between these two systems. And so again, that's something that can be very frustrating if you have any issues between those integrations. Again, that's 100% integrated in Sparkrock 365. Once you post the payroll, it's updating the general ledger in real time. It's updating the payroll ledgers in real time. And there is integration for any deductions that you can transfer those to accounts payable. So even there's integration across other areas like accounts payable. So that's the first point I want to highlight in terms of helping users understand the value of having the fully integrated system. There's another area. So for example, maybe if there's a new cost center or new program code that's been set up in finance, that's done through an area called dimensions. And so your finance team may go into dimensions, may set that up, or if it's a grant that's awarded, they're changing the status on the grant and it's automatically creating that record. And then there may be, for example, maybe that's a new funding source, and in HR we want to set up a new position for that. So I can go into my positions, I can see my case manager here, and I'm just going to open up an existing position here, but I could easily set up a new one and copy from it. And you can see here how I've got the integration to account sets, the GL, specific GL, or a cost center, or a department, or a program, or project, or grant. You know, all of these are areas where I'm simply selecting, if I'm setting up a new position that's for that grant that's just been awarded, I can just come in here and select this value, or select that grant code and attach it directly to this particular position, and then any employees that are hired into this position are going to automatically inherit that grant code. The same applies, I'm showing it here on a position, but if you're making this available for someone to code their time to, there's something called an activity. I can immediately set up an activity and make it available for individuals to tag their time specifically to that grant or that department or cost center as soon as it's been set up. And so with this kind of structure, it's actually impossible for that common scenario where something's been set up, someone's coded their time to it, but when you go to pull that data into the general ledger, you realize that code has not been set up yet, right? Or there's a mismatch between what was set up in payroll and what was set up in the general ledger. So again, because this is a single integrated system, then that we can eliminate all of those issues and frustrations. So again, just to summarize, this means that all of those reconciliation and synchronization efforts are completely eliminated. They actually don't exist when you have the appropriate systems and integrations in place. Okay, so I want to move into the second theme and shift gears a little bit into considering integration, but integration from another perspective. And that's from the perspective of staff scheduling. So the theme is streamlining staff scheduling, and the challenge really is service-driven nonprofits, so organizations, if you're really focused on service delivery, whether it's residential or maybe day programs or a combination thereof, where you have staff that are being scheduled, nonprofits really face some significant challenges related to staffing, right? When organizations are running multiple programs across different locations with a range of staff members supporting these programs, scheduling is practically guaranteed to be one of your biggest headaches, right? If you layer on top the complexity of managing when staff are perhaps off sick, or maybe on vacation, or perhaps are in training, managing these schedules becomes even more difficult and more complex, right? We're getting into sort of exponential complexity, right? And on top of that, you may even have employees where they might work part-time for one program and then part-time for another program, right? And so again, their availability needs to coexist across all of these different places. And so again, we're really hitting into some really dramatic complexities that these organizations need to deal with. So again, symptoms that indicate an organization doesn't have the appropriate tools or processes in place are things like programming disruptions due to staff absences caused by illness or vacation, right? So if I work in two different programs, I may have been able to call in sick to one of them, but maybe the message didn't get across to the second one, and so maybe there's staffing disruptions, right? If I'm not there, maybe we can't run the program if we don't have the right staff to client ratios in place, right? So without having integration across these different parts and functions in the organization, that can be very challenging. Another area is disruptions in programming when staff members are engaged in internal training. So again, if we've got some professional development, maybe there's some new requirement or compliance where we need to train our staff, so we're pulling them off the front lines and having them come in for training. If that's not appropriately managed, and again, we don't have the right ratios for staff to clients, that can also be challenging. Or maybe I'm working in two programs, and so one of the programs I work for requires that extra training, but the other administrators for the other program weren't aware of it, then that again can cause problems. Increases in overtime expenses resulting from staffing challenges, right? if you're making last minute decisions on scheduling and you really didn't have the right tools in place to be able to see that someone's going to be away down the road, then generally the easiest way to fill that gap is to really ask someone to work a longer shift, right? Can we extend your shift? Can you put in a few extra hours, or can you do a double, right? And that often really results in significant overtime incursions. And then finally, scheduling conflicts where the staff member is assigned to work in 2 different programs simultaneously, right? If I'm shared across multiple programs and I don't have a system that knows where I am at any given time, that also can cause all kinds of programming disruptions or overtime costs. So let's take a look at the system. The solution is really to use a fully integrated solution that takes into account all of these factors, right? It takes into account the fact that I may be away because I'm on vacation, or I may be unavailable because I called in sick, or I may be unavailable because I'm in training, or I may be unavailable because I'm already working on another program. So really looking at those scenarios all in one place. So I'm going to go back into Sparkrock 365. In this case, I'm going to log into the employee self-service. This is the employee self-service area of Sparkrock 365, and I'm going to go into scheduling, and I'm going to start by looking at unit schedule. And a unit schedule is the place where either a scheduling supervisor can see, I can see everybody who's working together, or I can see the other individuals that I'm working with in my at that particular unit, right? I can see who I'm working with, who else is working in those units. So I'm logged into the rec center, and it's defaulting to today's date here. And again, I'm logged in with this view that allows me to see who I'm working with. You can restrict that view if you and users can only look at my schedule if that's something that that you want them to see. And this is the full schedule. This is what's called the agenda view, where we get sort of a highlight of the dates and the shifts. We offer many different views, a calendar view with day, week, or month that's available, so you can look at any one of those views as well. I like to work in this agenda view because it's very easy for me to filter on anything that's pending, or for example, vacant shifts. And I can see this is today's shifts, for example, and I can see that there's some vacant shifts here that likely they're happening yet today, or they've already happened, or maybe if I'm planning for tomorrow's shifts, I can simply click on that shift and call it up, and I can start to consider how it is that I'm going to fill this shift. So if I'm actually speaking to someone, maybe I've already made arrangements outside the system, and I know I can simply click on fill and select the right person to pick that shift. Or if I'm looking to fill that shift quickly now, I want to offer it out to multiple individuals, the system will show me who is available. And it takes into account all of those factors of availability that we talked about, right? I'm already not working somewhere else. I haven't called in sick, or I'm not on vacation, and I'm not in training somewhere through, use that schedule using our training module. And I can see that Kristen Wiggs is the only other lifeguard that's actually not, matching one of those criteria. I can pull down additional information about Kristen, and I can see what her target hours are, and it will highlight it in orange if I were to assign this shift to her, and it's going to put her into an overtime scenario. So it will tell me already if it's going to put me into an overtime scenario, right? And I can see also the closest prior shift at this unit or elsewhere, or consecutive shifts, or last offers that are made. I can even look up contact information, or even qualifications if I know maybe this is some special shift where I'm going to require additional qualifications. And also, if this is not sufficient, I can cast the net wider. Maybe I can look at all positions and see who else might be able to pick this. And so in this case, I'm able to offer it. This doesn't necessarily make sense since it's a cook, but I can pick additional individuals that I can offer it. Maybe there's some crossover between these different positions, so I can offer it to all these 3 individuals right from here. And I can just click on offer, and it's going to send out notifications of those 3 individuals. It identifies that that shift has been offered to those 3 individuals. We can see it here, and they can accept and there's even a process for them to accept that right away. So just something else quickly to highlight is I can see an area under the shift for Ramon that's today, and I can see that there's overlapping. Hey, in somehow the shift, and it's just that the shift, his first shift that he had has been extended to overlap with a second shift. So it's alerting me to the fact that there's an overlap. There's a red error here that would be available to the user immediately at the time of extending that shift. So it's very clear that this person has an overlap, and so I can then address that here. It's also identifying it's going to exceed the maximum daily hours in setup. So between the two shifts, it's going to put him into daily overtime, or maybe there's regulatory where someone's not allowed to work over a certain number of hours. That's all built into the system and available for users right from here. So those are some of the things that are available right in the schedule. Now I'm going to go over to absence management and just give you a little bit view of how that integration works. So in this case, I can go in and I can see balances for my different absences here and even see them plotted on a calendar. But in this case, since we're talking about the integration with scheduling, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to select some vacation time that I'm planning. And I wanted to highlight, I'm gonna select just some time off that I'm taking. I'll pick a from and a to time here. Oops. And I picked or just pick a shorter time frame here. So I picked October 31st to November 3rd here. And what the system does is it searches through my schedule and identifies any dates or shifts that I'm already working. So with scheduling, you know, the amount of time I'm taking off is really related to the shifts. And so I can then submit this absence request here. And once I submit it and once it gets approved, the system is going to flag this shift as a shift that's vacant. We do have shift bidding functionality as well. So if employees are shopping for shifts, they can see that shift is available and they can bid on that shift. And so again, there's some tremendous value in having the absence management area also integrated with Sparkrock 365. So again, those are the things that I wanted to highlight in terms of this concept of a single employee never being in one place at one time, and also showing the integration across absence management, across scheduling, and of course the final timesheets from scheduling are fed directly into payroll and you don't need to rekey data into the system. Okay, so moving on into our third theme. So this is really about managing employee changes with HR requests. So the challenge is really HR staff and managers, you know, hiring managers or managers who are managing a team at nonprofit organizations are perpetually trying to manage many different priorities, right? You're running a program, you're trying to manage your team. All of these things can be stressful and time consuming. And there can be a lot of stress and concern in terms of managing all of these things. And in many cases, a lot of the details that fall through the cracks might be related to employee related changes, right? If there's an employee change that's required, there's many different tasks and systems that need to be updated and you know, can be challenging or problematic if those are missed. Partly due to the lack of integration, partly due to the lack of inadequate tools. HR personnel often need to update many different systems, spreadsheets, lists, etc. You know, maybe stay on top of notifying the IT department or notifying others and make sure that things don't fall through the cracks. And that can be very, very stressful. So symptoms of organizations that don't have the right tools are things like manual or email-based approvals for new hires, right? So if, again, back to some of the themes we talked about in some of the other sessions, if you're relying on manual approvals, then this is really less than ideal. You're having a person make decisions, and again, your auditors are going to look less favorably on that. And because, you know, those decisions are not consistent, they're not system enforced, they're human enforced. Another symptom is HR and IT staff responsible for updating many different lists and systems with new employee details or employee changes, right? We've all seen that where there's, some sort of qualification tracking spreadsheet, and then the new employee update in this system, and the new employee update in that system, and then the IT updates, and setting up new accounts, and those can be time consuming and problematic. Or employees being set up or updated after the fact, right? Also that happens where someone's hired, they've been on the job for a couple of weeks already, it's gone through a pay cycle, and only after the pay cycle has been finalized, somebody realizes that they weren't set up correctly in payroll, therefore they didn't get paid. And again, that could be problematic, embarrassing, and have a detrimental impact on employee satisfaction. So let's take a look at a solution, and the solution is really to have workflow and automation for onboarding employees or for managing changes to employees that really manages the degree of complexity that organizations have to deal with. So I'm going to switch back into the system, and I'm back into Sparkrock 365 here. And I'm going to start by going into something called HR requests. So HR requests are the mechanism in Sparkrock 365 where all major significant employee changes are transacted, right? That's the workflow. It houses the workflow. So if you're setting up a new employee or transferring an employee from one position to another or dealing with a change, those all go through the HR request. They can be initiated by a hiring manager or by a manager. They can be initiated by HR. Whoever needs to initiate it can do that. But the system houses the entire workflow and what needs to happen with it. And so in this case, I've set up a new hire, and I'm going to go into details here. And I pre-filled in a little bit of information for Alexander here, who we're hiring. Just a little name and address information. I pre-filled that in so I don't have to fill it in on the fly here, but that's about all I filled in, and also the new hire date here. And then what I can do is select the position code. And in Sparkrock 365, and I'm going to hire Alexander as a new case manager here. So notice when I select the case manager, it fills in all kinds of additional information. So in Sparkrock 365, the position, you can define a lot of business rules and attributes around that specific position and have the system apply those business rules to all kinds of other places downstream. So we can see that it filled in all kinds of other details here. Pay grid information. In this case, Alexander is coming with more experience, so maybe I'm going to bump him up to step 2 on the pay grid, and you can see it changes the amount here, the rate for that, and we can see all of that in other information. So there's benefit information, allocations, experience, even allowances that I can select here that are all filled in. But once I fill in that information, right, I only picked the case manager position and I only changed them to step 2 from step 1, which was the default. That's all I had to fill in here besides this personal information. And the system filled out all that other detail for me. And again, once I do this, it'll subject the transaction to the appropriate approvals. But once those are in place, I can click on process all steps and the system will go through and it'll apply all of these functions for me. And if I go to process individual steps, just so you can see that the system created the employee, inserted the email, created the self-service user, inserted the scheduling unit, created the assignments, deductions, rates, unions, tasks, qualifications, miscellaneous articles, attendance plans, entitlements, benefits, and appraisals, right? These relate to many of those different systems or spreadsheets that you have in place today, and the system is completely applying those. On top of that, it created any onboarding tasks and assigned them to the manager, the employee themselves, to HR, or to payroll, and those have been issued and assigned and are showing up now in the dashboards for all those relevant users so they can complete those tasks, and they're being reminded via email reminders to do those. So again, we can dramatically reduce the complexity, the balls that all of those individuals are juggling all at once, and really help move away from trying to remember all these different things or having these checklists in place to have a system checklist enforced in Sparkrock 365. So just to quickly summarize the themes that we talked about, integration can really help your organization eliminate inefficient and frustrating reconciliations. right? Integrated staff scheduling can ensure your human resources are deployed efficiently according to organization policies and rules, minimizing overtime costs and scheduling mishaps. And HR requests can help apply organizational policies and business rules consistently and efficiently to staffing related activities. This can help increase transparency and reduce embarrassing HR oversights that erode employee satisfaction and efficiencies. All right, so that was a lot of content, but hopefully you're getting a sense of how having a truly integrated system where all of these pieces are in one place can help your organizations. And we know that sometimes, depending on your role in the organization, understanding some of these principles can be really powerful. However, it may be useful to have some tools that can help drive an internal dialogue around helping others in your organization also understand the value of having an integrated system. So to that end, we've created an assessment, an HR assessment, that is we have an assessment for each one of the webcasts in this theme, but it's a simple HRP health assessment. And there are, I think, just 4 questions here. So you go through these questions. It's a spreadsheet that will circulate to you after this. You can review these questions and then just put in the response score. So if it's yes, it's a 0. If it's no, it's a 5, et cetera, et cetera. Add 1 point for each one here. And then you look at your total score here and you can find where your organization sits on that health score. It'll give you a quick summary of the current state and maybe some of the next steps to consider. And in our experience, going through this with your internally at your organization, in some cases can be helpful in terms of helping others understand some of the risks and benefits of really considering whether it's time to reassess your internal systems and processes. So again, that's an asset that we'll be deploying to you, and feel free to check that out. And if you want any help filling those out, if you need any help, then again, you can follow up with our organization to do that. And now I'm going to hand things over back to Gary, as we're going to move into our Q&A section. So back over to you, Gary.
Thank you, James. Yes, it is time for our Q&A. All right. Thank you very much. So if you have not done so yet, please, you can ask your question using the Q&A on the top right of your console. It is the right time to ask question. And I can see that we already received a few questions from the chat. Question number 1 that I see here is a question for you, James. I am a current user of GP on-prem and use the integrated payroll solution. Can this project replace everything that GP does? Before you answer that question, James, I just want to add, just for those that are not aware, maybe some of you are not. So GP is referring to Microsoft Dynamics Grid Planes. We actually have a lot of questions around GP in every webinar we do, because it's such a logical path to go from GP to Sparkrock, right? So I just wanted to make that comment before you answer.
Yes, so that's a great question. And first off, I believe that Dynamics GP is the #1 system that through our history at Sparkrock we've migrated from the most. So great news there, and it's a very natural progression to Sparkrock 365. I believe that there may even be multiple payroll solutions in GP. I think there was one primary and a few other add-on solutions. So depending on it, there might be a slightly different slant on what's covered. But as a general statement, the capabilities of Sparkrock 365 in human resources and payroll are definitely equivalent, and in almost every case, significantly greater than the features and functions in Dynamics GP. However, ideally, it's a conversation that we have with our team. We can look in detail at how you're using that solution and really give you a more detailed answer on what that would look like in Sparkrock 365.
All right. So next question we have is, does your scheduling app support multiple location for the schedules as well as multiple programs? And can approvers be different for different location and or programs?
Okay. A really good question. And so the first answer is, the short answer is yes. So with scheduling, we have something called a scheduling unit. And the scheduling unit is typically a different, can be a different location. And so you can have one location, and then there's activities that people code their time to. And so those activities can be different. So I could have one, I could be scheduled the same location and have a morning shift with one program and then afternoon shift with another program or cost center. If you want the approvals to be different, then we would set up each of those programs as a separate scheduling unit. And there's an unlimited number of units that you can set up. And so we can manage all of that complexity. So again, if you're dealing with those kinds of things, then our scheduling solution is the right solution to consider, because it handles all of that complexity and will make sure that even if an employee is working in all those different places, we know where they are and we're not going to schedule them in two places at one time.
The next question. Yep. The next question we have from the chat is, what does the integration to the general ledger look like from Payroll? Do I have to rekey the journal entries, or do they come in automatically?
Okay, so another good question. Yeah, so those, you don't need to rekey in any journal entries if it's coming from our integrated payroll solution. In fact, that's what I drilled down on. In the first example, the first theme, those were the specific GL entries. They come in detail. Again, in reporting, you can summarize them for reporting purposes, but they come in detail based on the GL allocations for the employee. And there is the ability to drill back for an individual with the appropriate permissions to drill back right to the source transaction details across the different modules, including, payroll or timesheets or things like that. So they will come in detail, and users with the appropriate permission can see right down to the employee level which employee is driving those entries.
All right, and we have one last question from the chat. How long does it take to get this project implemented? So if it's okay with you, James, I'm going to take that one, and I'm going to give a very typical answers, which is it depends, right? So there are a few things to consider during implementation, and among those we have the size of the organization, the complexity, the modules that we are required to implement, right? Are you looking for finance only, HR, payroll, time entry, scheduling, but also the level of customization or level of integration required with potential third-party application, right? And all those are going to play a role in the duration of your implementation. So there is no straight answer to that question, but based on our experience, a typical implementation will be 7 to 8 months, right? But do not quote me on that. We will always need to assess your specific requirements to give you an estimate. All right, so this was our last question. So this wrap up our Q&A session. Thank you, James. We will actually also follow up with all of you with the assessment that James presented to you earlier. And as mentioned, at the beginning, we will provide all the attendees with a copy of the recording as well as the link to the Real Beef webinar, so you can review it on your own time and share it with any other member of your organization. All right, so today's webinars was the last of the series of 3 webinars. So if you have missed any of our previous session, I would strongly recommend taking the time to review those. They are a wealth of information that we believe could be valuable for your organization. And all the webinars include a self-serve assessment that I will also encourage you to take. If you need more information, if you have any additional questions that were not covered during this webinar, or if you want to discuss your specific needs and requirements, please reach out to us at connect@sparkrock.com. Our team will be very happy to assist. Once again, connect@sparkrock.com. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and I hope this was very useful and helpful for every single one of you. Cheers.